Hi, Defender. Thanks for joining me, friend.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for inviting me here.
So, we've been mutuals for a while, and I've been very curious about your tweets and the sort of seems like you're a man on a mission. You've got a sort of project that you're on that's you're telling the world about and getting people involved, and there's different sub projects, and so that's had my curiosity raised for a while, and I wanted to have a conversation and learn more about you and your work and sort of your mission. And Um, as you know, I really like to start these conversations and frame them in terms of people's life story and who they are personally. And for me, that really just contextualizes everything. There's often very specific things that I'm interested in, specific things that I'm curious about, specific questions I really want to ask. But I like to have that almost, I think of it like a portrait, and that's the frame of the portrait. I want to get specific details about what someone looks like or what their life is like, but then it's framed in a larger context. So I'd love to hear from you about your life story, whatever you'd like to share. It can be brief or long, it could be vague, it could be interpretive dance and poetical, or, a great drama. It could be all in verse if you want. Whatever works for you works for me, but I'd love to hear about your life and what's happened so far for you.
Yeah, I love the frame of framing it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But I think I've so okay. One of the things I'm excited about with this podcast and why I was excited that you reached out and why I wanted to do this is I feel like I'm ready to be legible. I want to be legible because I feel like I do have a mission. I feel like I'm trying to do something here. Um, and I want it to involve people, and I need help actually. Um, so yeah, I want to explain it. I want people to tell me if it makes sense. That's where I am now. So yeah, where am I? Where did I come from? What is my life story? So I think the here's how I see myself. So I'm software engineer. Okay, so that's a big arc in my life. I started out making Flash games on Newgrounds. Um, Newgrounds, you could also almost say is like where I grew up. I don't know if are you familiar with Newgrounds and Flash
I am,
games?
yeah. It takes me back.
Yeah, yeah, man. Okay, so I actually carry silver. Actually, I don't know where it is. I used to carry this keychain of the Newgrounds logo. Um, it was it was the first thing I won. I was 12 years old, but then it's been kind of like my key almost like when I run into someone who recognizes it, I'm like, oh, we grow. It's like this is my hometown almost. So this is kind of how I see it. Um, yeah, I grew up in Egypt. I came to the US for college maybe about 10 years ago now. Um, making flash games, making video games on the internet. That was my childhood, and then switched into making software, specifically making maps, which is actually very cool. That's what I used to talk about. This is my life for a while, making like working on like think of it as like a open source Google Maps kind of stuff. And when I don't know, making map software is really fun because it's not just software. Like the software making touches the real world, and so sometimes there's like a bug, but it's not a bug. It's like a weird thing on Earth. Um, so um, so it's fun. Um, I think those are the big beats, and then yeah, I'm based on the East Coast here. And then yeah, so I mean, if I could draw a graph, I would say I used to be very big in internet culture, and like my closest friends started out as on the internet, on Newgrounds and in the collaborations I made there and the things I made there. And then I kind of disappeared from the internet between 2014 and until 2021, really, until I made this account Defender on Twitter. And I was like in the real world. I was very offline, I guess. Then I felt lost, and I don't know. Then I came back, found my way back here, and I feel great now, and I'm on the upswing. So that's
Hmm.
that's that's my life curve.
Hmm. What was it like growing up in Egypt?
I I feel like this is a weird. thing, but I definitely I feel like I assimilated to American culture before I ever left, which is why, and I'm not the only one. I think there were other weirdos kind of like that. Actually, you know how like there's like Weebos and it's like Americans are really obsessed. It's like there's that, but we just don't have a word for it. But there's the Egyptian kids, I guess, who are obsessed with American culture to a cringe extent. Um, and, and I guess so in some ways it was that, and so I was kind of didn't quite fit in. Um, my relationship to Egyptian culture and Arab, etc., has improved a lot. And I think now I sort of regret like not being more immersed in it when I had a chance to. Um, but yeah, I grew up very much with like a American superiority. If you drink the Kool-Aid that like America is beautiful, then you're where you are is not. And but my dream came true. Like I now am in the best place on earth. I don't know. I'm very happy where I am. Um, but that yeah that was kind of that.
Do you remember how you started to get introduced to American culture and become enamored of it?
I think I almost remember that maybe there's like two big formative memories. I don't remember which one happened first. I remember my first ever scene of like Friends TV show. And it was like in this like extracurricular class where we were like immersion, English immersion thing. Um, and I remember like, class was boring, but then like now I was watching TV and it was uh I remember a scene from Friends. And other than that, the other big touchstone is like Pokemon forums, where I don't know, I was really into Pokemon and then I got into the internet forums and I find other people and I was talking to them and I was like, oh, it felt good having human connection. And then it was in English. And then I think most of the people on there were American. But then I started finding my first communities through there.
Hmm. Can you paint a picture of me for me of what it was like to find Newgrounds and hang out there and start developing games for it?
Yeah. um, I actually told this story many times because it was so formative to me. I had like a line, but it was I used to write stories like fiction, and but I was doing this in class, and no one was really reading them except for my English teacher, and he had to grade them, I guess. Like I take things like essays. I'm supposed to write an essay. I just write my whole thing. But anyway, I wasn't getting a lot of like feedback in the audience, and then I think I was just jumping around these internet forums. I think I knew about Flash games, and then I found one. And honestly, okay, here's the important formative memory. I remember Newgrounds and their slogan was everything by everyone. And that was one of the most like I've never forgotten this, and it's like in my deep in my heart right now because Newgrounds was categorically different from anything I had ever seen on the internet or in my life. Like, do you know that Steve Jobs quote everyone's always talking about, which is like that, where he says, like, one day you realize that everything around you is made by people, and once you realize that, and they're not different from you, and then everything's malleable. He describes that. I think that was when like I didn't know about Steve Jobs or didn't know about that, but like Newgrounds was that it illuminated that because it showed me, and they were actually very like their whole culture was uh, very good at emphasizing this. They're like, look, everything on the front page is not made by some big company. It's made by a bunch of kids. We're all just kids. And he's like, in fact, the guy who started it, Tom Fulp, bless him, he's a saint. Fucking love Tom Fulp. I met him once. I was so starstruck. Anyway, he was like, I started this whole thing when I was 13. He was fucking 13 years old. He made a magazine called Neo Geo. I actually I memorized his bio. He had a whole little biography. I memorized it like gospel. I was like, this is the way, you know. But he really believed in this stuff. He believed in the value. He believed the kids are capable of much more than we think, than like just putting them in these little boxes of school and telling them to shut up. Um, Tom Fulp created this beautiful thing that I found when he was a kid and I was a kid. I was reading that when I was 13, and I was like, Oh, I can make stuff too. And it was like, I don't know, it was just an invitation. Man, I'm gonna tear up now because it's like I feel like it was just so perfect because you come in and you see something beautiful on the front page, and so you're already it captures you, and then you're like, wait, it's made by people like me. Okay, how do I do that? And then you immediately the next step is you find a community of people who are all very supportive and who tell you like, okay, you want to make stuff like this? Start small. Start here. Here's a game engine. Here's the thing. And then they're like, okay, hold on, you're not good at programming. You're very good at making art, but you don't go good at writing code. That's okay. We have a people who are good at the other thing. They're very good at the making the art, but they can't write the code. So maybe you guys can find each other. And then it's not just fucking beautiful. And like we've lost that. Like it it I didn't realize how unique Newgrounds was until it was sort of gone. Like it's actually not gone. It's still there. People don't realize that. Um, but its cultural significance has dwindled. A lot of people have left. And the spirit of collaboration and openness and finding peers it was a very unique culture that I haven't found anywhere since. But I think we can, I don't know, I think humans are capable of doing that. Okay, trailing off a bit. Does this make sense? Where were we?
It does. Yeah. Uh, what do you remember what it was like for you to develop your early games when you're in that era?
Yeah, yeah, very much. So the first thing, so okay, so it started with me telling stories, and then I was like, oh, I see people making like flash animations. So maybe I can tell my stories as movies, as animated film, and then it looks like I could get an audience, and then double. Okay, so I tried making my own animation, and then it got blammed, and that was the word for if it it didn't get enough votes. It had such a low score that it was deleted from the website because it wasn't good enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there was a period of judgment. It's kind of like when you submit something to like Reddit or Hacker News or whatever, and people vote on it, and it either gets on the front page or it doesn't. And here it was like either gets deleted. But it was funny. Yeah, I just got deleted, and I was shocked. I remember being shocked. I was like, wait, my mom said this was good. What's going on? Did my mom lie to me? Uh, but it was good because it was like feedback. It was like they were like, this is the drawing sucks and the cuts, the cuts are bad, blah blah blah. And it was specific. It was like here's why it's bad. It's not just this sucks. It was like here's why it's bad. So I was like, okay, well, what are the things that are getting accepted but aren't getting the front page? So I could see like what does it look like for people? Like what is the bar of quality that I could try to go for? I spent a long time trying to make Flash animations. I made a few. I was good at sprite animation because like I couldn't make my own art, but I could like grab existing pieces of art and move them around. Um, I think my big breakthrough was when I realized like I was good at I could write code. I could do this video game thing because I was like good at math, and so I was like, okay, I could learn this code, and then I there were other people looking for coders. And I found someone on the forum and I was like, hey, do you want to work on a project? And that was it because it wasn't just about like learning, but it was about human connection and finding a peer and learning together and making something. And yeah, I think the real point of magic came when like you are a bunch of kids and you make something and then it's on the front page and then there's like literally yeah, I think when my first game that had like 500,000 people playing it. Yeah, and 13 years old, 500,000 players. You Google your game, and there's like pages and pages of it on other websites because that's what happened when the Flash game. When you put it out there on Newgrounds, other websites would take it, and it was good because you have ads in the game, so the culture is very open. Um, so that was monumental. I was like, I made a product. I changed. I also, I'll tell one more story because this is important because I was like, I think I have the power to change the world, literally. And I was like, hold on. What if I make a game that has a title that has a made up word as a title? And if you Google, I picked toast dash. Okay, it was a toast and mustache, mixed toast dash. Okay. And I Googled that and I was like, there's no results. The first page is just nothing. Okay. And then I was like, all right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a game. It's going to be called that. And I expect that it's going to take over Google. And I did that and I made it in a few days, just 3 days. It was like a super tiny, it was a really stupid game. It was just a fucking piece of toast with mustache and it's just jumping around. That's it. And then we released it, and then yeah, it actually got 7 million views, and actually it was a very fun game because like there was not much to it, but it's just very cute and fun. And it was all over Google, and I was like, I literally created a new word. I was like, because I was again, remember, America is the land of the free and the promise, and where all glory comes from. And I'm sitting here in Egypt, and I mean, everyone sort of feels that like you were not able to create new knowledge or like contribute to the world. Like the world is created by the people over there. They're the smart guys, and we're here just kind of consuming. And so it occurred to me that like I thought about like the Google servers as like a mythical place on Earth, and that I could affect it. That I had an idea, and it's like that feeling of like you can edit Wikipedia, but like I can edit Google. I made waves, and people could know not my name, but my creation. Um, so that was it. It was like this is it was the most elation I'd ever felt. And again, I'm a child. I'm 14. I don't know. It's just beautiful. I felt empowered, and I was making money, and I was making money in US dollars, and that was like a lot of money for even just someone working full time, like an adult in Egypt. At some point, one of my most successful Flash games made more money than like what my dad's car was worth, and that's when they started realizing like I'm not just screwing around on the internet, like I'm not just screwing around on my computer. Like I'm like, because at some point I was like asking my dad for like his bank account so I could transfer money into him. He's like, "Where's this money coming from? Like what's what are you doing?" He's like, yeah. I was actually okay. I'll just say this too. Like, I feel very fortunate that like the internet was so open to kids back then, and like I'm telling a story of like child labor. Like I was working as 14-year old, but I'm very glad that I'm very glad my parents didn't understand anything, so that so they couldn't shield me. I don't know. Like I'm sure there's other people who've been there's other I don't know. For me, for my life, I just think about like how if I growing up today, I wouldn't have had these opportunities, I think. Because at some point I was signing contracts with these companies that were paying me money for to put their branding on the game. And they didn't know that I was 14. And it probably wasn't even legally binding contract because I'm like 14. But didn't matter. They just PayPal you the money and you do the thing. You put their logo in the game, and that's it. And it's pretty open.
Wow. How would you collaborate with these other people to make these Flash games?
You'd always be once you like sort of make the initial connection, either you see each other's work, or you talk a little bit, whatever. Once you decide you want to work together, I don't know. We were like on MSN Messenger, and I guess later Skype, but it was always text chatting, and we'd like pick an idea. Um, Usually one person came up with the idea, the other person was like joining their game design thing, and yeah, this was like funny enough, like before GitHub, before Git, like we weren't uh we were I was making a build of the game, and I'd send them a file and they'd play it. And like in this case, I was always the programmer, so they'd always be sending me the art. They send me a PNG image of like the character, and I put it in, and they'd send me a sound file, and I put it in. And I give them a build every day, and that's pretty much it. And then when it's ready, you put it on up, and then yeah, if you're looking for money, then there's a website where you could go. It's like a bidding process. You would find the sponsor basically. Yeah,
Hmm. Wow. Do you remember how that felt to collaborate in that way?
it could be very very good or bad, depending on if you vibed. Um, at some point, I learned that like game jams were a really fun thing in order to filter out people. So like they're like hackathons, like make a game over a weekend. Um, you just think because yeah, basically you didn't know if you were going to work well together until you worked together. Um, so I don't know. I have like my fondest memories, but also like most heartbreaking memories at the same time. Like because it's a lot of trust. I don't know, yeah, and then you find someone, and then I think the most fun part also was like I didn't know at the time because I was like, oh, I just want to make games, but I was also like just learning a lot about people because people from all over the world, like and people I don't know, collaborate with people from Australia or Eastern Europe, or just sometimes I wouldn't even really know where they were from, and they were older than me or younger than me. Um, but as you're building a game together, you just learn a lot about each other, and that to me was almost like maybe my favorite part because again, I wouldn't have described it that way at the time. But what are you doing when you're making a game together? You're like thinking like, what is the most beautiful or interesting thing, or like something that's cool. Everyone just wanted to build something like cool. Like when it's cool meant, it meant like resonating. Right? And so you were like testing each other. Like, does this resonate? Does this resonate? Like, what about this? What about this? And then when you if and this was not oh it was somewhat rare, but if you both resonated with very similar things, then you could kind of climb together and piece together this puzzle of like how do you make this thing that you both wish existed.
Hmm. What was heartbreaking when it was heartbreaking?
I think the like you come in with this beautiful creative vision and then someone else doesn't see it and uh okay, I mean my very first one was one where I invested like 2 months working on this game, okay, and then this guy decided he didn't want to work on it anymore because he basically he like his other project he was working on got super popular. He made a bunch of money from it. Yeah, see, he got popular. Like he was like making $15,000 from this game, the gun game, it was called. Um, but then he was like, he basically I was small fry now. Yeah, he didn't want to work with me anymore. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll try to finish it without him, because we already did a lot of work on it. And I was like, can I at least try to finish it? He was like, yeah, fine, whatever. And I did finish it, and I did like get some money. Like someone offered $600 for it, and he was like, oh, well, we have to split that 50-50. And I was like, but you, first of all, you were like, you told me to go like screw off, and you just made $15,000, and you've made a bunch of games before, and this is my first game, and you didn't even want to finish it, and I did all the work to finish it, and I made a bunch of art, and I was like, even trying to tell him like, what about 60-40? See, here's me being like so kind. I'm like, oh, what about 60-40? I'm like, I'll still give you. I just wanted like some acknowledgement that like he wronged me and that I deserve some, almost an apology. I wanted an apology more than I wanted the money because his response to 60-40 was like, yeah, whatever, I guess. And then I don't know, that just pissed me off so much. And then the guy didn't even the sponsor fell through, and I never even got any money from it. That was like a nemesis I had for a while. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make games so good, you're gonna see. Um, I had a lot of nemesis actually. A lot of my work was spite fueled back then. But that's the heartbreaking thing because you're investing in relationships. Um, that's just the thing I think I don't see much anymore. Like I tried making games, a couple of years ago. I was like, I'm gonna get back into it, but the culture was gone. Like I DM people, not off the Newgrounds, not just everywhere, and it basically would be like people were just freelancing now. They're like, oh, I'm down for it, but like, how much can you arrange a contract pay up front? And I was like, I'm just doing this for fun, and like, it was just yeah, I couldn't. It was almost the culture had shifted, and yeah.
What do you feel like you learned about people during that chapter of your life?
Um, there's a couple things here. It it really cemented. Okay, this is a big whammy. Cemented my belief, which I still am working on, that if you want deep, intimate human connection and that feels good, etc., you have to be useful. You can get that by being useful. Um, because the better I got at programming and the more I could ship projects, the more I would find people who want to spend time with me. Um, okay, so that's the kind of the personal psyche one. But then I think the other direction is that served me well is I don't know, being willing to like collaborate and find and do cool stuff helps you find people who are open to collaborate and doing cool stuff, and you can make really beautiful things together. And in fact, I was collecting these stories of like the way people got like really successful and really rich and popular, like the people behind Super Meat Boy, who they made this super popular indie game and they're millions of dollars. They met in exactly the same way that I met a lot of, or me, it was meeting a lot of these people. There was just a bunch of online Newgrounds people. They made a few games together. They worked well, and they made a big thing. And that kept happening over and over. And I think that's actually like that's a big thing in Newgrounds. Like I think a lot of people who started out on Newgrounds are now working in the animation just industry or big films like that like met through that community. Um, so I guess like scenes and putting yourself out there and that it would pay off that if you were open, yeah, if you were being open to meeting new people and sort of seeing the best. And yeah, it was very. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Were you implying that the first belief is like incomplete or not accurate or hasn't been useful to you?
Yes. I think being I think believing that I need to be useful to find human connection is preventing me from deepening connection and relationships in my life. I think because okay, here's why. There's a flip side of it, which means that if I see myself that way, that means I see others that way. I see it as like if a person isn't useful to me, then they're not worth my time, which means, yeah, it means I may not value people or just accept that they can just want to hang out. Yeah, it goes both ways, which is why I think it's bad
What do you think
for
is
me.
true, or what would you like to believe instead?
I think I believe a lot of people just enjoy human connection and don't need an exchange, a utility. Um, like the almost the dumb example is like, I'll help you with your homework in exchange. I'll get to spend time with you. But you don't. But like recognizing like that a relationship can survive without that, and in fact maybe it'll be better. And I mean you can still work together, but you don't have to work together. Yeah.
What was it like for you when you did move to America?
It felt like my it felt a little bit like a rebirth. And I say this not it's not it's not too exaggerated because there was such like a big cutoff between my life before and after. I sort of like didn't keep in touch with a lot of people from before, except the people I did stay in touch with. They also were people who moved to the US. Um, so there was like a very, very, very clear gap. And then also like I sort of adopted a new name, but not intentionally. And it was only sort of because in Egypt, first names are very common. So guys especially tend to call each other by their last name. So I had a name that people used, which is my last name. And then in the US, people were calling me by my first name, but they were also pronouncing it in English, which sounded different than how they pronounce it in Arabic. So it felt like it was just a brand new name, and it felt like a brand new person. And I don't know, I was very socially awkward in Egypt. I didn't know the rules. There's a lot of etiquette that I was implicit that I never kind of picked up on, and so I was always kind of scared of social situations. But in the U.S., the U.S. has this beautiful narrative of like, um, I don't know, it's especially where I went to college. It was like this, like, hey, I'm an international student, so I'm not from here. God, weird. Come from a place far, far away. And I think Egypt was still also kind of like, I think I was like the second ever student from Egypt specifically, and the other guy was someone I knew. Like, I was there because I knew he was went there. Um, but that helped. That helped in my favor. Like, some people were complaining, it's like, oh, we should treat everyone equally, and like we shouldn't. There's a lot of talk about microaggressions at the time. Um, but I was kind of pretty happy that people noticed that I'm not American and asked me what's that like, because I could say, oh yeah, I had an excuse to just ask people about social customs, which may just be like they're not even uniquely American, they're just like how people interact. And I could just be like, oh yeah, what do you do when you want to hang out at a party? Or like, what, how do you get someone to know? I don't know, like all these like things about like how do you do friendship? And people could be like, oh well, you're not from here. Let me explain to you how friendship works. So it was great. I felt like suddenly I had an excuse. Like there were no stupid questions. I could just laugh it off and be like, oh yeah, I'm not from here. Just tell me, explain it to me. And they were happy to explain it. And honestly, like in retrospect now, I feel like this is like a cultural technology or like a cultural pattern or like a frame. Like okay, this is maybe like to jump ahead a little bit, but what I feel like I'm doing now as defender on the internet, part of what I think we need to do is like studying studying frames, constructing frames, even on an individual level, and then handing it to someone and then saying, use this in your life, see if it works. And so what I would have done, what current me would have done for me 10 years ago is look at the problems I'm having, diagnose that, hey, it looks like you're missing a lot of social etiquette knowledge. And I could just sit down and explain it to you, but actually, here's something even better. I'm gonna give you a tonic that's gonna relieve the stress of you asking, and that's like a frame. It's like think of it this way, um, and like it's kind of a move. It's a social move, and so okay, so you practice that with your therapist or memetic doctor or whatever you want to call it, and you can like see just how like massive of a difference that made for my life. Just that single move, and then that changed my perception of myself, and then that fed forward. Um, so that was in retrospect, I think that was the biggest change, because then I just went forward and I was like, I'm a new person. I'm not scared. I know how things work. And I learned, and I went back to Egypt, and when I visit, shocker. A lot of the social customs and stuff I learned are not uniquely American, and I could like now talk to people uh, back home too.
Hmm. Hmm. I want to ask about the mapping work that you did, and you said that sometimes there's just these like things that aren't bugs, but are just like weird things about Earth, and I'm wondering if you can give me an example of something like that.
Yeah, I had a lot more off the top of my head when I was doing that work because I talked about it a lot. But I'll tell you, I'll see if others come up later. But the big one, um, do you know about a place called Null Island?
I don't.
All right, well, let me tell you the story of Null Island. Um, okay, and then another one just came out to me. So okay, I'll tell you two stories. So Null Island um, is, let's say you're working on you're mapping some data, it could be anything like voter data or whatever, where like voter distribution in the US or something like that. And then sometimes when you're doing that, you'll see there's a bunch of people on a very specific spot off the coast of uh, Western Africa. Yeah, and then you investigate. You're like, what the hell's going on? What's going on over there? And then you zoom in and you realize they ended up there because there was missing data in the spreadsheet for the lat long, and so where does missing data go on a map? There's no missing number. It just gets auto converted to zero most of the time in most systems. So it's the 00 on the lat long. Um, so it ends up there. And so it got called Null Island because someone no, it was kind of an inside joke in the mapping industry. Like someone made an open source data set, and he was like, "Well, a lot of data ends up in a specific spot. Let me make an island for them, so that when people are looking, they like know that you ended up, you have a bug in your code." And also, it was kind of a callback to in the olden days, people would make maps, paper maps, and then there was no copyright, but you could sort of create the notion of that by putting in fake towns so that if a fake town ended up in someone else's map, they copied you. They didn't actually find it. So it's kind of a nod to that.
Hmm.
So that's not Ireland. There's something even funnier though. Okay. Um, I don't. This will be fun. More fun if the audience, people hearing know more a little bit of code. Are you familiar with unit tests?
Sure.
People write, yeah. There's a little test that run to check the code if the code works. Okay, so we had a unit test that seemed to always fail around lunchtime. So that's a crazy, actually that's already a crazy theory, and nobody's suspected. We just know that we had a unit test that sometimes failed. Okay, and whenever that happened, we just reran it, and then it succeeded, and you were good. Okay. Um, I was the one who started to notice that like it seems like I'll be writing code and then this keeps failing and then I'll be frustrated and I'll go to lunch and come back and it works. And this happened like several days. So I was like, what's going on here? I intentionally tested it. I ran it and then I waited and then I ran it again and it worked. I was like, okay, it is failing over lunch. What's going on? And so I dug into the test. I was like, what's going on in the test? And the test, I'll tell you what the test is, and maybe you get a clue on what's going on here. So this is a 3D engine. The test is just purely checking that it's like a thing where you can visualize 3D buildings, okay? And then the test is checking that you can change the color of the buildings. And the way it does that is it gives the building a random color and checks that the color is not white because by default it's white. And when you change the color, it says something else. And then you check the pixels and you're like, okay, that's not white, so the test passes. Okay, so that's the test. It always worked correctly, except right around noon. And given that this is a 3D engine that simulates the Earth, any guesses as to what might be happening?
Maybe it's simulating the Earth's light on these buildings and changing the color.
Yeah, like think about you're taking a photograph. If you're taking a photograph with an actual camera in the real world, there'd be like lens flare or something like the glare from the sun. Um, that was it. It's because right around noon, the sun's directly overhead, and like the building, I guess, has a material that's too shiny, and so it's white because it's so shiny, and you just need to wait for the sun to pass. Um, and that was it. And so it was really fun pull request to open where I'm like, I fixing a test that fails because the sun is in the wrong direction or like fails a bunch. And you can just like you can force the sun instead of it just being whatever time the day is actually, and you could force it to be like, okay, it's going to be 4 p.m. whenever you run this test, just to control for that.
I see. I see. Huh. Huh. That sounds satisfying to have gotten to the bottom of that. Uh,
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's probably more stuff like we as engineers were always like we're very deep in the code, but there were people like domain experts who like, cared more about the real world. And shockingly, most engineers didn't seem that interested. But I was always curious about like who's actually using our code, what are they doing with it, and a lot of it was like people, I don't know, all kinds of things, people mapping the ocean floor, people doing digital agriculture. Construction companies, landfills. One of the things of this job was I got to visit a landfill, and like the bulldozers were like making 3D maps of the construction site. But it's I don't know, it's just fun. Most software jobs you don't get to see the real world that much. You don't get to like I don't know, talk to people doing mining and construction and agriculture and like talk to those people directly. So I thought that was my favorite part of it is it was very real. It was very real world. My job was like looking at maps all day, and I don't know, if you're bored of like developing in this part of the world. You can just default the view to somewhere else, and that you know now you're looking at that.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. So, shifting gears to talking about Defender and what you're on about there, can you tell me sort of the arc of having that Twitter account and what's what's happened so far with that Twitter account?
yeah, and this is where I wish my analysis tools were a little further, so we could see the arc. I want to make like a little calendar view where you can see my first tweets. Um, I don't know. So I just want to paint this picture because it's been in my head for a long time. Imagine like a calendar view, like you have on your Google Calendar, but and you can zoom in and out, and but it's your tweets, and like each level they're summarized. So like, or even summarized by an emoji. Like I think if you look at mine, a year view, you'll see the first month of my tweets. There'll be like a little sad face.
Hmm.
So the vibe of my tweets were a little like I was kind of like lost. I was searching. I was yearning. And then you can like see kind of like it get a little more positive just from looking at the smile, you know, the emojis. Then if you zoom in, you can like see exactly what was it talking about, what were the topics. So you know, I don't know. I basically I'm answering this question on this like two levels. I want to answer the actual answer, but also I think there's the meta answer of like I want dashboards this because I have a look, I have a narrative of what I think happened in my life because I've changed a lot since I made this account. And I think I have a personal narrative of what happened, but I also want to know like, is it true or like I don't know, like what are the other narratives in there? Like what do other people see when they see this? What arc do they see? If we all had to describe it, would we describe the same thing? Um, I don't know. Seeing I don't know. There was a Rick Rubin that I read in the last year. Rick Rubin thing about seeing your life like an artist is someone that makes art, but also the life of the artist is itself a piece of work. Like you can see your life as a piece of work, and I love that. I think that's true. And there was an unrelated thing. Amjad, who makes Replit, he had a blog post about how you should his rule of thumb is do what makes the best story. And I love that too. It's the same thing. I followed that before. I was going to write about that before I found his article on it. That like when in doubt, just I you know okay. So here's also kind of a narcissistic thing. Like I feel like I've always lived my life like as if one day there's going to be a documentary about it. So I'm like I'm trying to like keep track of artifacts and like milestones, but also like think about inflection points. And I've realized like I don't think it's a bad like I don't know. When I told this to some people are like, "Oh, who do you think you are? You're gonna get it. You think you're gonna be famous?" But I think it didn't matter because I think the point was that I was just always I was always thinking about the arc of my life and what I wanted it to be, and I wanted it to be beautiful. And because I don't know, it is my story. Um, so it was yeah. Okay. Does this make sense? We got here
Mhm.
from the arc. I feel like the having this Twitter profile um honestly was a chance for me to like figure out my story and like edit my story. So it's like this meta narrative that I was doing collaboratively. Okay, to actually answer the question, um yeah, I had moved here to Ithaca, New York, um, and I was working remotely, making good money. And but I don't know, I was bored, I was lost. I basically I think I was feeling like I hadn't found my people. And I was trying to think like when's the last time I felt like I had found my people and that I was happy. And I was like, okay, it was when I used to make was making video games long ago on the internet on Newgrounds. And I did try really hard to like meet people in real life and that, and it's fun. I have met, I have friends in real life and have a community, and it's fun. But I still yearn for this like something deeper or like creative outlet. I see that thing. I wasn't sure. What am I missing? Am I just missing creative outlet? I'm missing specific types of friendships. I didn't know what I was missing, but I knew I was missing something. I knew I. So I came on the internet as Defender to debug that. I wouldn't have described it that way at the time, but I think what I was doing is, yeah, debugging myself, seeing what works and updating and getting feedback from people. And making things better. Yeah.
What were the bugs that you found and what were the updates you've made?
See, if I had the dashboard, I could tell you like exactly like you can see in this, But I mean the big ones again, and again, so the problem is stories keep getting retold. I think that's a feature, not a bug. The fact that our stories about ourselves are retold. Um, like what I have in my head now is a compression of like the current story that is useful. Um, I will tell you like I think like okay, like here's a few specific reasons why I made the account. I've been wanting to write about this. It seems so vulnerable, but I think it's also good. Eigen Robot was one of the things that tilted me or inspired me to make the account, and it was because he and someone else outside of Teapot, who's like a computer graphics person, someone who looked smart but had political opinions that were opposed to what I believed was a good person should have. And I didn't understand. I was like, how can you be smart but have bad opinions?
Hmm.
Uh, and so so this is something I struggled with. I was like, I want to just ask like, why do you hate poor people, or like why do you hate women, or like why do um, and I'm talking about like growing, being in a liberal bubble and then seeing people say different things. And I didn't feel like I could ask. I basically had dumb questions. I feel like I couldn't ask them under my real name. And so that was initially what Defender was about, just asking dumb questions. Um, and so okay, so you're asking like what are the big things? And one of the big belief changes or like or bugs, etc. is I mean people aren't evil who are different from you. Um, they're worth talking to, and maybe you'll understand each other. See, this is a big one, but and it did come early, but also it's more salient now. Um, it, so I feel like there's a lot more like personal growth things uh, that are like even earlier. Okay, I'll just say because I tweeted about this a few days ago, where I was like, I should have written, or like I regret not writing more when I was in the critical period of like updating a lot of my beliefs, because once you sort of fix the bugs, you sort of you integrate, and then you forget um, how you got there. And I was making a point about like beginners, people on the path, people improving themselves are better able to teach people in the same position than experts and people who figured it out already because they can't relate anymore. Um, I almost want to pull up because I have this dashboard of like all my tweets chronologically to kind of jog my memory. But wait, can you re-ask me a question?
Yeah,
For
I'm
like kind of
asking about the bugs that you found and the updates that you made and sort of how having the account shifted things for you personally.
I feel like it's almost hard to pin it down off the top of my head now because it feels like it touched everything. Um, I don't know. I mean, here's maybe a big one. Okay, this one's very concrete. Okay, it just took a while, but I got it. I resolved my and a lot of a specific social anxiety that made me think that I was an introvert, that I just couldn't be around large groups of people for a long time. I used to struggle with that, and now I don't. And I just fixed that. So that was a very concrete update. And the way I fixed that, I think, um, see, I don't remember like what sequence led to it. I could probably find it, but the what I, the way in retrospect, what it was that I basically learned how to root cause it. So it's like, okay, well, why am I struggling to um, why am I struggling around large groups of people and like just hearing what other people are talking about it and what theories people have. And I found one that was true, which was I'm trying really hard to impress people. Okay. And that I'm holding a lot of stress. Like I'm working really hard to do that. And if I let go of that, if I just stop trying, if I stop trying to impress people and I do a pre-grieving thing in my head where I'm like, I either they like me and they want to hang out, or they don't, and I can't change that. I sort of relaxed. Um, and I think okay, and this is it's very related also to realizing when I was around people, I'm holding the stress, but then when they leave, as soon as they leave the house, I like sort of relax, and then okay, just first of all noticing that because I didn't used to notice that before. So that's also, I guess, a big arc that everything is downstream from, where I learned to like feel my body. Okay, so once you have better sensory clarity and can feel your body, then I can tell, okay, when I'm with people, I'm stressed. When I'm alone, that stress is gone. Where is that stress coming from? Okay, I'm holding something. And some people, I'm like doing experiments, right? Like, okay, so some people with my partner, I don't feel that, but with specific people, I feel it. With some people, I feel it even more. What's the difference? Um, and then I figured out it's this, you know, in a lot of cases, it's this trying to impress people, and I can just stop doing that. And then I can just, it was crazy. Like I went from like being able to spend a week with like in-law family and like just not be exhausted and actually be like, yeah, I can do another week. Like yeah, let's do it. This is fun. It was just mind blowing. Like I would have never, I thought I was gonna die as an introvert. You know, like I was born an introvert, and I was like, "There's no this is like it's a genetic thing that can't be done." And the fact that I could just like rewrite, not even rewrite, it wasn't even that big of a thing. It was just like noticing attention and letting it go. Um, that was a big thing that I like, ran around like screaming to people, be like, "Guys, it's did you hear this introvert thing? You can just change it." Um, that was pretty profound. I think it honestly it changed a lot of how I interact with people and how I like structure my life. Um, Honestly, very profound. Like I used to just be like, I need alone time. Like even with my partner, like I need, and it was a kind of a problem in the relationship because we'd be like, okay, well, like she has to find other things to do, and like it 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 was very, it was a thing I suffered from a lot, and now I just don't. And yes, that was one of the biggest concrete changes very early on that made me feel like this is huge. Like this is, and even if I stopped there, it was like my life's just already like way better.
Hmm. Hmm. What's your sense of how doing something like tweeting can cause these personal shifts?
So I have a theory um, that there's a couple different angles. I think it depends on how you use Twitter, but what I noticed and how I started using it is okay, I noticed this in my real life. There's a friend that I spent some time around with, not like a lot of time. Like, you know, I just known him a few weeks, but I really liked him. I liked him a lot. And I noticed, you know, we only hung out for a few weeks, but then I had like picked up one of his mannerisms, which was kind of shocking because it's like, okay, I know I have mannerisms from my dad and or people I've spent a long time with, or my partner of 10 years. We picked up each other's mannerisms. I get that, but like, how can I have adopted a mannerism from someone just 2 weeks? Like that seems crazy. It's like, and then I realized I think it's because I love. I love how I feel around him. I love the way he sees the world or sees me. I basically realize that I'll like hold him in my mind as I'm going through my day. And I think that's where the mannerism comes from. Like it's like I want to react to things the way he reacts to things. Um and and it's subconsciously enough that I did start reacting to him to things the way he reacted to things which involve like the physical motion. Um which is pretty cool. So we know that happens. You've got mannerisms from friends who like you like and you think about. Now I think that's true of Twitter. I pick up the mannerisms of the people that I pay attention to, specifically the people that I was trying to like be a reply guy to. And it all makes sense now because what does it mean to be a reply guy? It means thinking about what could you type, what sequence of words could you type that would get you a positive response from them. Okay, so how do you do that? That means you have to think about their mind and how they see the world and predict them. And so when you type something that they don't respond to it, then you update your model of them. And the more you do that, if you're successful, you're picking up their mental model. You're simulating them in your mind. You're predicting them. You're I don't know. There's something about a soul. I wanted to write a see in the very first thing I did with my Twitter archive when I exported it was I made a page where I could see the first 5 interactions with every single person that I follow. And I did that because I was like I was so sure that I could find that the way I looked at the world and the way I spoke, the way I typed changed after I interacted with these people. Because that was my Twitter. It's basically I'd like focus on like 2 or 3 people at a time. I'd like just look at everything they're doing, and I'd sort of like grow towards them. And like okay, so this is the embarrassing part where like uh, I feel like Eigenrobot. See, I want to write this and tell him because it was very informative. I picked up a lot of like healthy masculinity norms or like frames or relationships from him. Like in some ways, I feel like the embarrassing part is I feel like I went from like a boy to a man because of trying to simulate Eigenrobot. And I think the only reason this feels embarrassing is because I don't know. He's also I think he would say this like shit posting a lot or like I don't know how serious he feels about a lot of things he posts. There's a lot of things that like intentionally I don't know. I think he's like a controversial figure. Um, but I think he's also very sincere. I don't know. Like I think the things I pick he had these ideas of responsibility and like I don't know this idea of like the buck stops here like I think what I picked up from him are like the best of conservative values that I was like not exposed to in like the liberal bubbles um where I was and that I didn't really pick up from my parents because I was so closed off to Egyptian culture generally. I was like I just don't want to touch anything with it. It's only American, yeah. I missed the boat on doing that, you know, growing up. So I never and this was my chance. And then so you know, I'm fucking like 29 years old and like only now do I feel like I actually know what it means to be a man um and take responsibility and um so I guess that was another bug. Like I was missing I was missing some important frames of like masculinity and responsibility and feeling comfortable in that and feeling like I'm willing to step up and be an adult and be a man and take care of other people. And that was something I got very early on from Megan Robot and but that's just one thing. So like I sort of orbited Eigen and got that from him, but I kept doing that with a lot of other people and always taking something. And I found myself like this like what would Jesus do? But it was like what would Twitter celebrity number 9 do? But, I just I feel kind of lucky because again I wanted to write something about how like I was memetically open source like I was letting people infect me like it was literally changing my mind and I think it could have gone I mean I don't know it could have gone really it could have been radicalized or something I think I was feeling that because at some point I was like one of my tweets was like should people have an anchor friend and by that I meant like if you're if you're going too deep in an ideology or something and your anchor friend like is watching where you are and so they can like pull you back because I was just my brain and was moving. Oh, I was able. It felt like it was malleable, right? And so it could go in any direction. And I feel like what helped me stay like safe was that I had this rule, which to this day I don't really. Everyone thinks it's dumb, but I don't think it's dumb. I think it's brilliant. That I don't block people. I don't block anybody. I've never blocked anybody. People have blocked me, but that's fine. I'll never block anybody. And the reason is because I can't. Like, what if I am saying something stupid or dumb or like harmful or bad? I want to hear that, and if somebody says it's giving me criticism, and I will not, I won't dismiss it if I don't understand it. I'll always understand it because maybe they're right. Um, and there's nothing else keeping me safe. I don't know. Like I don't know. I was like every new belief I had to tweet about it because if somebody had a good reason why it was bad, then I needed to hear it. Otherwise, I could go off the deep end. I think that's it. Okay, because everyone's like, "Oh, you're so high openness," and I think I am, and I think um, I think without this like self-correction mechanism, like I'm relying on like there being enough goodness in the world that it'll keep me tethered. Um, so that was it. It was just a very vulnerable exercise, but it worked out, and it worked out really well, really quickly.
Hmm. You said in December that it seems like there's one consistent theme in all of your 20,000 tweets at the time and all your essays and everything. And you said, I just need to make it legible. And how would you currently point to that theme or describe it?
Yeah, this is great. This is time. It's time to be legible. Um, okay, I think the closest I've found as just a single word phrase is is like it's alignment. It's global human alignment. Or my friend's son now has convinced me it should be alignment of all conscience beings. Um, okay. There's another tweet by a friend, Lemonot, who describes it as he's like, look, all the cells in the human body have learned to operate together in a way that's like harmonious for one cohesive body to exist. And he's like, if the cells can do that, then I think humans in a human society can also learn to do that. Um, so that's the project. It's the project of creating the best possible world. Okay. And okay, here's the fun part. Part of the best let's say this already happened. Let's say we won. We won the game. We have the best possible world. What am I doing in it? That is itself part of the work. If we're not done with the work if I am miserable. Then the work is still not done because it's not the best possible world. Best possible world is the one where everyone's thriving. Okay, so okay, so this is it. So here's my whole arc again in this new frame. I was sad, and then I got on Twitter, and then I did a bunch of work, and then I found the problems I was stuck on, and then I'm just much happier as a person. Um, and I had a specific path to that. I had specific things I was missing. Um, and I'm like, why can't we all do that? Everywhere, wherever you are, find what are the things you're stuck on, what are the things you're missing. Everyone's got this little path. And then here's the thing, once you do your path and you feel way better, you write down what worked to help other people in the same positions. And then if a bunch of people are struggling because of some big systemic thing, then we know about it, and now we can, I don't know, can you start a company to fix that? And now you're making a bunch of money and also helping people behind you. And it's just going to be pretty beautiful because it's it's sort of by definition like this project, this like big project that like requires everyone, everyone's input. Again, if someone isn't thriving, then the work isn't done yet, and we need your help. Um, okay, and then just as another little factoid to throw in there, one of my beliefs now that I believe very strongly, with great conviction, is that humans need meaningful work the same way like plants need water. Like that's how we thrive. We thrive on purpose and like people, a lot of people have like associations with work, like employment and like going to a factory job. And I'm like, work here means just any. People make video games. If there's books on like what does play mean, and they don't know how to define play because there's no different. They call it voluntary work. There's no real. Um, the only yeah there's no I'm just saying like if people have a bad association with work, replace that with play, like meaningful play, like creation, like something productive, etc. Um, okay, anyway, I think humans need meaningful work to thrive and purpose, and so this is actually a scarce resource now. Like, it's like, well, how do we find meaningful work for all these people? There's so many goddamn people in the world. Never, everyone's always like, this is a problem. There's so many people. And I'm like, okay, hold on. We have two problems now. We have a lot of problems in the world, and we have a lot of people who need work. And I'm like, guys, come on. It's obvious to have to spell it out. These two problems cancel out. In fact, each human comes with their own problems that need to be solved, and so each human creates meaningful work for others. Like it's just this beautiful, thriving ecosystem. Um, Humans need meaningful work. Humans have problems. There's always going to be work to do. We can do this work, and we're going to feel good and solve our problems. Um, and yeah, a consequence of this is, I think, yeah, I think the economy can grow a lot without like consuming extra materials necessarily. Like there's just so much work to do with like human thriving. And when humans are thriving, they like pay for services of other people. It's just it just we don't have to choose between like the economy growing and human welfare. Like they can be aligned. And like companies will make way more money and will feel good. Like this is the thing. Like this is one thing I've been like screaming about is like people are always like, oh, company, either companies succeed or humans succeed. Like it's a zero sum thing. And I just think it's a big blind spot. Like people just aren't even considering the option. Like I'm not saying it's like immediately obvious like what to do, but I'm saying like most people are not even trying to look for a solution. And I have a few concrete examples I can share, but I'm trying to show people like, look, there's a lot of examples if you're looking for it. And the real game is like doing this over and over, aligning incentives, um, and don't wait for the AI alignment people. Like, oh, there's a lot of like really smart people, like economists, whatever. Like, I think are working on this kind of thing, but it's not going to work without it can't. No plan will work without participation from everybody because by definition, that's kind of the end goal. Like the end goal, the North Star is like every single person is thriving, and we'll never get there without you participating. Because the whole point, does this make sense? Like if you're not participating, then you're not thriving. Um, if you're yeah, we need input from everyone. You need your own like yeah. Okay, I'll pause there.
Hmm. What is your sense of how you started to discover these ideas in yourself and in the world? How did you come to start to think this way?
I think the beginning arc was just purely like just lost in searching and just wanting to learn everything and just wanting to feel better and wanting to feel more alive. Yeah, I think eventually I sort of started moving towards not just learning stuff but wanting to feel alive. Um, wanting to feel joy again, because I know I felt those sort of the ecstasy of like creating things and connecting with humans um, back then, and I wanted it again. And I knew whatever moved me in that direction was probably the right way. Um, okay, I think this is it. Okay, so I basically I went from like feeling like shit to feeling amazing, and then I saw people around me who um, don't feel good, and I could see what their problems are. I think when I started like replying to people or like telling people like, "Oh, have you tried this or do this?" and like both on the internet and also in real life, and people would respond with like, "Wow, that was I never thought of it that way," or "That was really insightful," or like I could see when people like I gave people a thought that was both like felt profound to them and it was something that never occurred to them before, and I don't know, I guess that felt good, and then it made me realize that like maybe maybe uh maybe my input is valuable. Maybe I do know something important that I need to share. And like I don't know, okay, because I basically went from like I used to think like, okay, look, whatever the world is, there's a lot of broken stuff, and like what you gonna do? If there was a better way to do it, someone would have done it. And you're just gonna just accept what you have. And then I started realizing that's not true. Okay, I think this is the big one. It's because I started noticing everywhere, including at work, like at my employer, which is like a big kind of big tech company, but also in my local community, but also in the street or also in my house. This idea that something is broken and no one's doing anything about it, and it's like in my hands, it's right there, and I'm able to fix it. And when I fix it, people go like, "Wow, it was so much better." And I'm like, well, okay, here's the insight. Um, Fixing things just is less expends less energy than feeling bad about it. This is the crazy part. Okay, because hold on, because if this really is true, that means like, what are we doing here? Like, I'm not even saying like, okay, so a lot of plans like make things better require like some big leap, some big resource that you don't currently have. But I'm saying something crazy. I'm saying it's the opposite. It's easier. It's easier than whatever you're currently doing. But that doesn't make any sense. If it was so easy, Mr. Defender Man, why why am I not already doing it? It's because imagine you have a bunch of again, I think of it as a spaceship or a boat or something. Like you have a bunch of fuel and you're using half of that fuel to go this way and half of that fuel to go this way, and you're not moving. Okay, and you could just tilt, just kind of a line, and then and now you don't even have to use all your fuel. You don't have to do anything else. Like now you're moving like twice as way more. Um, it's it's like that everywhere. And honestly, it's just a stupid. I had this epiphany in the bathroom of my local coffee shop that I go to every day, and they like there was like a the toilet paper roll was like missing, and it was like over there. So like, I was like I could replace it, and but I was like I shouldn't have to. Why isn't the coffee shop better? Um, and then I realized like I remember the thing about feeling my body, and I was like, okay, I feel my body. I was like, what's going on here? I feel this like spider. I feel this like it's draining me. And then I was like, if I just take it and put it in there, two things happen. I feel great. I feel good. And now the thing is done. And even just purely for myself, like that feeling went away. The feeling of like spite and like anger and I'm being upset. And I didn't even go out of my way to do anything. I was already just sitting there feeling like shit and also like looking at it and be like, God damn it. I was almost gonna tweet. I was like, why does the world suck? And I was like, this is so much work. It's so much easier to just fix the thing and move on. And like now the world is just a little better. And like it's like that's the thing. I'm not okay. This is where I got into the train of like, stop trying to save the world. I'm not here to save the world. I only did that because it felt better. Because I it required like understanding what feels good, and I just did what feels good, and that's it. I didn't sacrifice anything. I'm so I don't know if doing what's good for you feels better and your life gets better, and also it's good for the things around you and for the world because it's aligned. Because it's aligned, there's no resistance. then come on, let's just do it. I don't know. It's because then I started running into like, okay, other friends. Like I noticed like I can't be. I started running into limits because I was like, I can't keep doing this. Okay, I think that was it. I started running into like cultural limits. Like, okay, I fixed my bugs. Okay, like I figured out this whole like masculinity thing, and that was great for me. But then I started learning things that like nobody else understood or believed around me, and I was like, okay, this is really hard to practice. If other people around me adopted this thing, it would be much easier for me. It's like, like if everyone went to the gym, it's easier for me to go to the gym. But if I was the only one who discovered this was a good thing, yeah, it's like you woke up and you're like, shit, this exercise is good. You're the only human who's discovered this, and you're like, it should be obvious. If other people try it, they'll be like, wow, you're right, it is good. Um, and so here's where like I had this like fork in the road where I was like, okay, I could just like abandon my local community or like I don't know, move somewhere. Like I don't know, I could like change my life dramatically to like live exactly in the way I want. But I don't know. Maybe this is my fault, but I was like, I don't want to do that. It sounds like a lot of work. It'd be much easier if the culture evolved together. If we were all participating and getting better together, it'd be much easier for me personally. Because I'm stuck on various things, and it just make my life easier. Um, so that's where I am now. I just feel like it's the same thing with like the toilet paper, but for society culture. Like if there's obvious things that are sitting right there, because I can't do them because now they're at the culture level. But I'm like, I just have to tell people, I just have to explain it to people. It's like, guys, we could just do this. And all I have to do is explain it well enough, and people will do it, and they'll feel good about it, and it'll be good for me and for them. And we can just keep doing it. And I don't know that I want that to be my job. I'm tired of doing work that sucks, and there's work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done that is needed and is important and that feels good. So why would I pick something? Why would I do work that is soul sucking when I can do work that feels good? And it's not even like refusing like sorry, I can pause here, or there's one more thing I wanted to explain, which is like why I think Buddhism is good for the economy. Um, what do you think?
Music to my ears. Tell me all about it.
All right, it's a very simple story. Basically, I went from a lot of things are downstream from me feeling my body. I had a friend who asked if I wanted to do a job freelance for him because he was like, "Oh, I know you quit your job and you're doing this weird internet thing." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe freelance." I was like, I wanted to help him. Um, but long story short, I accepted the job because I wanted to help him. And then when he actually asked me to do it, it was going to be like it was very misaligned with what I wanted to do. The work was like boring. It was like a lot of coding web apps, and I wasn't going to get anything out of it, and the money wasn't even that much. I didn't want to ask for more money because he's my friend. Um, so basically, in my body, it felt like I was dying. I felt like I can't do this. This is completely the wrong path for me, and I've always had trouble saying no to things. And this and but I was working a lot of integration work, and like feeling all of my body and all the signals that it sends. So I got to a point like after day three, it wasn't even day, maybe it was like day two or something. I was like, I can't physically type. I can't physically do this job. I told him like, sorry, I think I have to quit. I think that the visceral part was that I couldn't like literally bring my hands to the keyboard to like do what he was asking me to do. Um, okay, so I ended up quitting that job, and that so the first it was scary because I was like, well, what the hell? What if I actually have to do work, for a living and to take care of the people who depend on me? Is did this whole Buddhism thing ruin me? Because like now I'm like, shit, I can't do work that's boring. That's really bad. That's a bad position. Am I gonna be homeless because I can't work? But then I realized like, wait, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that my body my whole being, um, knows the full situation. Do I need to work to for this job in order to survive? The answer was no. Do I want it? No. So why am I doing it? I had no, the only reason I was doing it is because one small part of me had this fear of like, oh, what your friend might be sad if you tell him. It's it's like I was afraid of like a cold splash of water, or like to get out of bed, this kind of thing. I was afraid of just a small thing on the way to making things better. Oh, okay. So it's because I saw that I could do greater value. So it's all, it was a bad decision. It was a bad decision to make to do that thing, and now that freed me up to do things that I think are greater value. Greater value, if nothing else, like for me, um, uh, right? Because remember, the whole thing about human thriving is like everybody matters because you're human life, and if you're miserable, then the work isn't done. But I think like also economic value wise, like now I wasn't doing this random freelance work that honestly anybody could do. Like that was the thing. Like I could do a lot of specialized things, and this was something, a young aspiring engineer that there's looking for work that could actually be a better opportunity for him. Um, this is where I like made this GIF that was like I called the Great Reshuffling. I was like, what if people just stopped doing work they hated? If one person stops that, then it doesn't look like much. But if a lot of people do that, I think you'll start to see that like, wait, the stuff that you hated, someone else wanted to do it because they were at a specific time in their life, they needed this for whatever reason, and like and like everything just kind of shifts. And people, I think people do better work when they're not miserable, like better economic value work. This is a big theory I have, which is of like of why empirically I think like Buddhism spreading is like going to create economic value. Um, and I think this is like true. Like I think this is why companies have gone from the big shift from like trying to push people to just work harder to like trying to inspire people. Like now the way you now get employees, like every company, even universities now are like painting this like mission and purpose. And sometimes it's bullshit, but it's because it's the best way we've found to get the best, highest economic productivity. So they already know that. Like, so okay, so if we already know that, the missing thing is like find the real value because there's real meaning. Um, you don't have to fake the meaning. There's actually real meaning. You can just find and people will create better work and will solve better problems. Um, okay.
Hmm. Can you tell me what memetics research is and how that fits into all of this?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I didn't know what to call it for a long time, and I think it isn't it isn't any different from what we've been talking about, which is thinking about okay, it's both like a very big but also very small thing. Okay, well one way to describe memetics is the narratives in your head, the beliefs in your head, and what do you the set of all beliefs, studying the beliefs you have and how they affect your life. Right. So one way is like, what frames you use to look at the world, and if you adopt a different frame, then you see the world differently, and you act differently. So to me, I'm trying to study because it should be obvious now that what I was doing by having this Twitter is sort of rewriting the narratives in my head and debugging them. And stuff like when we get infected by people, you pick up their mannerisms, you're trying to simulate them in your head, etc. So um, one way I think of what a memetics is it's just a combination of a lot of things that already exist. It's just like a unifying framework to see them as. So like think about cognitive science, and propaganda and marketing, um, sociology, culture. It's memetics is just all of those. I would say those are all departments or of memetics. So, the it starts with the narratives in your head, okay, but then those interact with the narratives in culture. Okay, so there's a level at which it's individual and there's a level at which it's culture. And then okay, when you have marketing and propaganda, those work because they align to what the beliefs people have. So if you want to market things well to people, you have to understand what beliefs they currently have, what do they value, and fit the narrative that you're selling. Like one of the things that big epiphanies was like understanding that if you, yes, I think it was Ayla who wrote about this. She was like, if you want to sell shampoo, you could just say, hey, this is a good shampoo, or you can say, okay, this shampoo is good for the environment. And now, if you care about the environment, now we want to buy that. And then the reason is because you want to be seen as someone who cares about the environment. Okay, so here's a product that if you buy it, it will validate that you are someone who cares about the environment. So it's helping you reinforce the story you want to tell about yourself. Okay, so that's kind of what Memetics is, but the basic level is okay. Someone could be like, it's just marketing, like okay, it's propaganda, etc., or like personal narratives, psychology. But I think what makes Memetics distinct from all of those things, or like the new thing that's missing here is we're not doing experiments. Like I think people have just sort of given up on that human minds are predictable and that you know this is where it gets like dangerous territory. But like in some ways, you can sort of be programmed. Um, I don't think of it that way. Um, I think of it as like debugging and root causing and understanding uh, self study and self steering of narratives. Right. So the missing thing is like doing these experiments, and then if you do I was going to say, okay, big companies, do A/B testing, and I don't know how many people like understand what A/B testing is, but it's very simple. Like Google's releasing an change, or even let's just say Amazon is changing the color of the buy button, and then here's what they do: they get a control group of like a million people that see a green button, and they get a million people who see a blue button, and then they can just see, do people buy more when it's green versus blue. And so this is like a live experiment that you can do on human people and get results. And so companies are doing this like all the time everywhere. And it's kind of lame because they're not publishing any results and they're not even doing anything interesting. I mean, it's just trying to make more money, which is like cool, whatever. But you could do something, you could do even more. Um, we could use this for like very pro-social, human thriving, human alignment, coordination um, things. So one of the dreams I had was like, okay, I saw what it was like at big tech companies, and I see there's nothing open source happening. And it's like I want like open source A/B testing of people, like what like they only just like the psychologists and the sociologists are sitting there with like little very constrained test subjects. And on the other side, the big companies are like doing these mass scale experiments, but they don't know what they're doing. They're not really trying to do much with it. And I'm like, where there's a huge gap here. So yeah, I think that's it's basically it. I've told people like open source propaganda is another thing, but yeah, it's kind of a big rabbit hole. Let's see, does this make sense?
What's the pitch for why we need that?
It's because so the simple pitch is at the very least we need it for defensive measures. So there's already a lot of propaganda, a lot of people trying to do stuff and trying to change your mind, and a lot of people change their mind without realizing that they thought they read an article, but actually it was like a targeted um, narrative. And in fact, this was the New York Times recently explained this, where they were talking about like smear campaigns and how effective they are. Um, etc. So the very minimum, I need people to understand how their minds can be hijacked, and that can, that's not good for them to not be aware of that happening. So that's at a minimum, and then the best possible vision is you use that as a mechanism to improve everything and coordinate. So in the same way that I did that when on my Twitter, I debugged my mind and I figured out what was keeping me from small things like inability to like relax around friends to the sense of ownership and masculinity, etc., responsibility. Um, like we can then start to debug like community, collective level narratives and like how do we see ourselves? How do we see the other side politically or whatever as an industry? I don't know. I just see all communities as becoming interested in, again, just think of a parallel between self-growth and introspection to collective growth and collective introspection. And it's in the process of doing that, we learn about each other and connecting and become closer. Um, so that's it. It's part science, part art, um, and all around a good time. That's my memetics pitch.
You say on you have a GitHub for your research, and you say on there, my current focus is developing experimental techniques, documenting them, and carrying out experiments to corroborate or falsify theories. And that made me curious, like what makes you think that you can do falsifiable experiments with memetic techniques?
Oh yeah. So this is honestly, I think this is one of like the things that I can pioneer here or am pioneering. Um, I'm always hesitant talking about this because I feel like on one hand, I feel like I'm on the frontier of something, and on the other hand, I feel like I keep discovering people who have been doing it for like 10 years. But I think it's okay because oftentimes those people have been working alone. I think there's a lot of people on the frontier, but they don't know each other, which is actually part of the problem of this field. Okay, so I'll speak boldly. I'll allow myself that. Um, One of the problems is people don't think it's very easily verifiable or testable or empirical, but I think that's a skill issue, and I think I am I fill in a gap of like understanding the humanities now, but also a software engineer, and I can use the tech and I can make experiments and I can do things. Um, one of my inspirations for this work was there's a book called Who Are We Now, and it was written by a guy who's like a VP of engineering at Google. He worked on language models, and he wrote a book about culture. Um, which I would actually say it's about memetics, but he doesn't use the word memetics because I think it's like he wrote it like targeting the mainstream, um, and memetics is not a very wide known term. But basically, he was studying the humanities with an engineering mind, and so that really clicked for me. I was like, oh, these things. He even talked about it. He was like, these things that are fuzzy and seem like they can't be pinned down. Um, he didn't. He wasn't. I think there's a way of like people who understand the humanities looking at an engineer and being like, well, he doesn't. He clearly doesn't understand it if he thinks it can be pinned down. But he wasn't. He wasn't even saying that either. Like I think he just understood both, and he was like, okay, these things are fuzzy and ever changing, but that doesn't mean we can't say anything true about them. He's like, let's just start with the ground level, like what is true, and then he's like, well, um, let's he did these like Amazon Mechanical Turk surveys, and he'd be like, okay, well, here's a theory that like people believe this because of this reason, and if that were true, what else would they say? And then we can like see this change because he did this over 6 years, and like different age groups, etc., um, and how things have evolved a lot. So my North Star, like why I think like it really can be concrete and verifiable and falsifiable, is that I play this game. I play this game on the internet called Anatomy of an Internet Argument, and it's it is actually a science experiment, which actually borderlines unethical. I don't think I could do this if I was in academia, um, but I think I'm doing it with full sort of consent here. So here's what's happening. Like people argue on the internet and engage and say like you what you're saying is stupid though. Like they'll come and attack me. And then my game is always like, what's the best possible ending for this interaction? That's the game. Okay. So I think about like, okay, well, I'll read their profile, I'll look at their past few tweets, and I'll get a bit of an understanding of who they are. And I say, okay, well, I see that they believe XYZ, they have these values, and I think I share something with them, or like I just, or if I don't have any common ground, I might say like, okay, I just want them to like learn something about me. I just want the interaction. I pick a target, like either changing their mind or like getting them to understand me or something. So then I work backwards. It's actually I've never like really visualized it, but it's like I'll be like, okay, I want to end with here with him with them saying like, oh, actually that was really great interaction. Okay, so what did we say right before that? And it's like, okay, well, um, and then it's almost formulaic now. Because the first step, people don't listen. People feel attacked, and they don't start listening until you signal to them that you are on their side. And the way you do that is by articulating back your understanding of them, and when you do that they feel heard, and then that diffuses the tension. So like basically what I'm doing in these interactions is I have an idea of what frames are in their head, what what narratives are in their head, what beliefs are in their head, and I have an idea of how those beliefs direct their behavior. Okay, so I don't I operate on the beliefs directly. I speak to like they might say, they might tell me like my thing, what you said is evil because XYZ. Now most people make this mistake of responding to XYZ and responding to those arguments, but that doesn't matter. What matters is they read your thing and they felt threatened, and they now they're sitting there holding a feeling where they feel bad, and they're fighting that feeling, and so this is what's coming out. So it's like this air blowing, and like I don't need to like focus on the air. I should focus on their state and where that came from, because it's just they're still blowing air, and I'll like diffuse that directly. So it doesn't almost doesn't make sense, like because the way I talk to people, I don't respond to what they're saying, but they don't notice that, and they don't notice that because I respond to what they feel, and they notice. I mean, they just it feels normal to them because I can feel them. Um, so anyway, you asked about like how do we know it's falsifiable, or like what do you think you can do here? And I'm saying like this has been my like field testing. Like this is how I make sure my theories aren't crazy. Like if as long as they work, as long as I'm able to take real people who are antagonistic, who like start out being they're internet strangers, they're not my friends, they're not people who owe me anything. They don't even have to respond, you know. But if I can go from that to like them, a lot of times it's beautiful. They'll go like they're like, wow, that like they'll say like this is I can't believe there's a reasonable person on the other side, like the political side, or like you know it's a miracle that someone changed their mind on Twitter, or like all these things, or like they just they've never experienced anything like it. Um, and it does feel a bit like magic, because what the actual magic that's happening is like you feel bad, and then suddenly by the end of 3 or 4 tweets later you feel good. And I was able to do that because my theories are valid and they're working, that I understand what's going on in their brain, and I understand how at this abstraction the beliefs interact and change behavior. And so I pick a target behavior, and I pick what belief, how can I get beliefs from A to B to trigger that behavior. Um, so honestly, that's it. That was going to be my big grand plan before I even discovered the word memetics. I was just going to say like, okay, here's the game, explain anatomy of an internet argument, and say the game is here's an interaction. How do you get the best possible one? And then if you fail, you submit it, and then we all look at it and we're like, okay, here's what you should have done instead. Or like, oh, I think you failed because of this, and that we build the theory together, and we keep playing this game and improving the theory. And then by doing so, you're also learning about people who are different from you, and it's going to be beautiful. Participatory science learning, verifiable. Like anybody, I'm actually hoping nobody takes me up on it. I actually wish someone would say like your theories are bullshit. You know, here I tried it here and it didn't work, and then we'll go in and like we'll test it out. Like I need people to test it because when they test it out, it blows their mind. They're like people can't people don't realize like how simple a lot of our big problems are. It's not that hard. You just tell them what you heard them say, and they'll feel heard. And oh my God, you're thinking too hard. There's too many smart people thinking way too hard. We're not, sometimes it's not that complicated. Um, okay, I think that's the answer.
How would you describe what the purpose of this series is, the anatomy of an internet argument?
I feel like the answer changes a lot. Initially, it was cope because I was sad when people were mean to me, and but I wanted to learn about them, and this was like an excuse to learn about them, and then I write about it and get feedback. But then actually worked too well because I was now like instead of like feeling bad, now I feel great because it's always a challenge and I'm learning and it's like a fun game. So it worked so well that I don't know, I wrote about it and then people like seemed to really like it. And I was like, maybe this can be a way I make money. Um, but I think I don't know, it's even bigger than I thought now. I think in some ways there's a lot of different ways to see what it's for. One is it's like, it's almost like, even if I'm the only one doing it, it's useful as like cultural exchange. Like I'm explaining people's frames to each other. I'm translating. So people hear someone who's like anti-abortion and like, oh, they must just hate women, or like, they have a set of like they have a mental model of who they are, and then I can sort of show them that they're wrong, and they're wrong because they failed to predict them. And I'm like, actually, you can actually get them to agree with this statement that you thought they would never agree with, but they totally agree with it because they're reasonable people. And I don't know, it's almost like the science of changing minds. Like everyone should be interested in this, like how uh, I do see it as like a way to, I don't know, cultural ambassadors is a big theme here where it's like you would, yeah, people just don't, people stick to their cultural bubbles and they don't really move from them, and this is like a safe way to do that. Another way is like I think it's like just trying to fix, like one of the reasons interactions on the internet are so bad is because people expect them to be so bad. And if I just keep showing like here's real cases, like when the first time it got on Hacker News, a lot of people were skeptical. They were like, "There's no way this would actually work. There's no way people would actually respond positively. People on the internet don't change their mind, blah blah." And so, but I think once people actually see it, that that does change their beliefs about it, and that changes the outcomes. So in itself, it's a memetic experiment, honestly, right? Like it's like, will people adopt this and will people start doing it? And how far will this spread? Um, so it's almost like it's my way of like trying to make a contribution to the culture uh, that I'm in. And if it succeeds, that's great. But if it doesn't succeed, that's also information data. I'm like, okay, the experiment didn't work. We got this result. Can we explain why not?
To take a step back, I mentioned that you're using GitHub to sort of present your research and share it with the world. Can you say why you chose to do that and how you're using GitHub to share what you're learning and working on?
Yeah, I love GitHub. I wish everyone was on GitHub instead of Twitter. Um, I feel I guess part of it was the first company I worked at, that was, the main product was open source, and even not in the open source part, they still use GitHub for almost everything, um, for communication. And that might sound weird to people, but what it functionally becomes actually is like an internal Twitter. So people on GitHub, you can have these issues and you write these tickets, and then these tickets can reference other tickets, and it's all very seamless and nice. So it literally is that people are writing tweet threads, and then you can embed others. And it was beautiful because when I worked at this company, they were very good about communication. They're like, everything should be written on this thing, such that when you have a new person join, I'll go and be like, hey, well, can we fix this or can we do that? And they're just like, actually, we talked about this 3 years ago, and this is where it ended. And then it's beautiful because then you can be like, it's not just like we decided we were going to do it. You can actually see the whole chain, and and you can like bump it up. So it was this So and and also people use GitHub for collaborating on open source projects, the biggest software on earth, the biggest collaborative projects on earth. And it's really good. It's so good for collaborative work. And I think software engineers, open source developers in particular, not software engineers in general, actually, open source cultures not that familiar actually to a lot of software engineers, especially the big company ones. But we're very open source engineers are very good at collaborating with people all over the world. It's much closer in some ways to like the Newgrounds culture. Um, so I don't know. It just felt to me like it was like a missing thing for like the culture on Twitter, where one of my tweets that like went viral that I didn't expect to was I was like, "Why are you guys writing Substack posts by yourself and like you get zero comments and you're sad?" And I'm like, you could just like give it to each other and like exchange. Like there's like 1,000 people writing, and one person gets 1,000 comments, and then the others get nothing. And I'm like, have you tried? Like, why aren't we just working together? Because that was just normal for when we were making video games on Newgrounds. Like we could just feedback exchange was just very much more common, but also this like collaborative. So that's what I wanted. I wanted to like my Twitter was basically me debugging my mind collaboratively, but then it got to a point where like I wanted, especially with new followers, like I don't know, I wish people could like go to my Twitter and then sort of see, like zoom out and just kind of see what are my current beliefs, what are the themes I've been tweeting about for the last like month, week, and day, and like what are my open questions, what am I currently stuck on, like that's just how like social media should work. And then like you should be able to like I should be able to like all my essays that are drafts, you should just be able to see them too. And then like imagine like tweeting like tweet reply like, oh, this is cool, or like have you considered this? And then we're just collaboratively writing. I don't know, like people are writing books. Like you could just see it as you're writing about it. Oh, yeah, why is not like we create knowledge. Open source developers are the best on earth culture. It's the best culture on earth for collaboration, for collaborative knowledge creation. The scientists, surprisingly, are not very good at it. And by that I mean I don't know, I have a lot of like friends in science, and there's nowhere near as much collaboration and sharing as people I think expect from the outside of science. Um, I think Twitter people when people are on Twitter, it's often way better. Academics who are on Twitter, I think, get a lot out of it for that reason, but it's still nowhere near what it could be. Everything is still like really bad compared to what the open source developers are doing. So this is another like attempt at I'm trying to bring the culture. Like I think just a lot of things are bottlenecked on culture. Like I think once this culture is working really well for software engineers, if this gets translated or spread to other people, it'll help them a lot too, because it's just a better way of doing it for a lot of things. Yeah, so that's why that for why GitHub. That's why.
Mhm. One of the other projects that you've worked on is the community archive with Chic, and I'm wondering if you can tell me about that project and what your involvement has been and what excites you about it.
Yeah, I'd love to. This was it's special to me because it's an example of a hyperstition thing that worked. And by that I mean I have a tweet from like months before the community archive existed where I'm saying I wish we had a website where I could publish my Twitter archive. Um, and then it's just very cute because I'm like, what if we have a little initiative where it's like imagine one day everyone exports their archives and we all put it up, and then Twitter can't do anything about it because it's our data. Um, so it's very cute. I kept explaining this concept. People were like, oh yeah, that's cool. And I was hoping someone would just like do it because the whole idea is like, I think this is like empirical religion now. It's like you pray, and when you pray real hard, it happens. Boom. But okay, but like there's a technical sequence to how this happens. I thought it would be good enough because it was really easy to build, actually, right? Okay, I was like, there's a minimum MVP here that could be built. Anyone else could do it. I don't want to build it. I want to see if I can inspire someone else to build it. It didn't quite work, so I was like, fine, I'll just build it. And so I made I made a little prototype, very, very simple, because I didn't want to build things at that time, but I made like a very kind of janky version. And you could upload, I think like five people uploaded their archives, and I was like, look, we did it. And it was very cute. And then a bunch of people saw it, and then I think Sheik saw it, and I think it wasn't Sheik. Someone else came to me. He's like, "Do you mind if we like build this?" Because they were like, "We looked at your code and it was a little messy," and I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty messy." And they were like, "Well, do you mind if like we start from scratch and make a version of this?" I was like, "Yeah, man, go for it." I was hoping someone would do it anyway. I don't want to do it. I want someone else to do it. So then they started working on it, and then so for a while I also wasn't sure like what my involvement is or what it should be, but I think where we are now is I don't know, it keeps changing. I mean, I've both basically mostly done like marketing and like brainstorming and some data analysis of like what the like I feel like more really evangelizing them, just explaining why you should upload your archive. I think I honestly I mean maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit because I think I'm responsible for getting Patrick McKenzie on there, sort of, in the sense that I sort of painted this picture. I was like, one day if Patio uploads this thing, it'll be really good. And then people read that and they're like, wait, that is a good idea. And then they kept pinging Patio. And I felt a little bad actually because then people kept pinging. But then he was like, he saw it and he was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And he uploaded. Um, yeah, so I'd say evangelizing and marketing, but also I don't know. I do see it as like a piece of incredible, important piece of open source infrastructure for all this memetic stuff. There's a bunch of reasons why I wanted it. One is like I remember I wanted my own archive and I want to see how my mind changed because that's important to me because if it's changing in bad directions, I want to know that, but also I can see what changed and I can share that with others. But also when I'm doing my internet arguments, I wish I could click on their profile and just summarize their beliefs. I want to see like what are their values? What are the things that they find beautiful? What is the things they care about? Because that's what I need in order to do my work of like finding common ground and doing that. So I just feel like it's I'm using it for a lot of different things. Um, but yeah, at the basic level, what the project is people export their Twitter data so that we can study it together um, for whatever purpose you want to study it together. Because I'm so verbose. There's just so much in the world. I want to say. I have so many words. There's actually another really important thing about the community archive, which is like it's changing the culture. See, everything has so many layers. Remember how Anatomy of an Internet Argument is an article series about a thing, but it's trying to change the culture by showing people that internet arguments can be better, and that changes how people perceive it. Okay, the Twitter Community Archive has a similar ulterior motive, which is to show companies that hey, look, you want people's data, right? Data is valuable. Instead of trying to like trick people into giving you their data, you can just ask for it. It sounds so stupid, but nobody's ever this is frontier of user experience in the tech culture. It's everyone takes it for granted that consumers have an antagonistic relationship with companies, and it's just the way it is, and you just have to work with that. And I think we can just it doesn't have to be that way. And not just that, but you're going to get better data. You're going to get better data than what you got before by asking for it instead of trying to force users to do it. And so if it's better and it's easier, why wouldn't you just do it? I think it's again because it's a cultural thing that hasn't pushed it. Because once we did that, I saw a week later the Washington Post. I don't think they were influenced by us, but I think it's like it was in the air. The Washington Post did a thing where they were like asking their users to export their TikTok data so they can like analyze and reverse engineer the algorithm and all that. And they got 1,000 people like overnight. Like people are like, heck yeah, take my data. Like can you believe that? Like people always like, oh, companies are plotting and scheming. Like how do we steal users' data? We gotta. But I'm like, you could just ask for it and just explain why you need it. Just tell them once you give us your data, we'll analyze this and we'll give you this result. And they're like, holy shit, please, here you go. Like people want to know. People and then YouTube. Then a few months later, I saw YouTube where they do this, they've always done this, like, like instead of an ad, they'll give you like a question, but they also are like prototyping this like survey, so that I got. And it's a similar thing. Like I think this will be the wave, and I think this will get us out of this like lose-lose situation where like consumers don't want surveillance and companies are trying to trick users, because at the end of the day, you want better products, and you want things to be better. And if you can share your data and make it better, then you should. And there should always be an option of like, you don't have to share your data. I don't want your data if you don't want to give me your data, because it's just going to be bad data if you're trying to hide. Like, people are like poisoning data now, and it's a whole thing. Um, so just ask you for the data. And so even if the community archive fails in like whatever specific applications it tries to do, I think it purely showing that this model works, I think will hopefully inspire others to copy it. And that'll change the industry and the relationship of it. Also raises the bar. Like, people will be like, oh, well, this company asked me for my data and I understand what it's being used for. Why can't other people do that?
Hmm. What do you hope for the future of your projects, and what do you see coming for you?
So this is, it feels kind of brand new, but so there's a person that I think might be like a collaborator now, Sun Ugwe, Sun Zhu. No one knows how to pronounce his username, including me. Um, but he's very aligned. Like, everything I explained today, I think he's like basically independently thought of it, which is kind of crazy. Like, find someone, I don't have to explain anything. He just already knows it. It's kind of a funny feeling. But also he has the missing pieces. So I write code, and I'm, but back in Newgrounds days, I didn't do any art. And he's kind of the opposite, where he does create art and film, and like as a director, and like he uh, is looking for people like to collaborate with programming wise to build stuff. So I think we're going to work together on this alignment thing, and figure out in what order all the stuff that I want to do fits, like this anatomy of an internet argument, or the community archive, or the memetics. Um, I think, okay, I'll just tell you. Okay, we heard it here first. The upcoming plan is okay. So I have this big plan for how things can be better and what we need to do and how I fit into it. And I'm gonna write that down as a to-do list of like, here's what we're doing, here's what we think should happen, and we're just gonna start doing it. And the hope is that, I can imagine a company that just has all of its plans fully public. So the idea is, if you understand it and you want to contribute, you can just do that. Like we both of us have this beautiful like philosophy of like, I don't care if someone steals my ideas, because I care about the thing happening. Like it's like I'm sitting here in my city and there's a bunch of trash, landfill. There's something broken in the street, and I'm like, I'm gonna fix it, and I go off and fix it. And someone imagine someone races behind me and it's like, ha! I picked up the trash and I fixed it, and I got paid for it. So screw you. And I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm gonna sit back down and enjoy the beautiful street. Like, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to pick up the trash. So this is basically it. I see problems in the world, and both of us think we can do something about it. But there's an enormous amount of work. There's so much work to do. There's so much work to do. So we're just gonna write about it, and then we're gonna go and do it. And if anyone does it before us, and each piece of work, because you're creating value, it's gonna have money. There's gonna be a lot of money to be made. So we're just gonna put out our plan. If someone wants to fund us, they will. If someone wants to steal our idea and do it, they will. And we'll like build off of them. Like, okay, this was step one, step two, step three. So we're gonna like hyperstition a company. I don't know. I think it's gonna be exciting. Well, the good news is, again, like, who am I? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not the person to start this, but that's the good news. Again, remember, there's a place for everyone. There's going to be a place for me in this ideal world. If somebody creates the thing, but there's no place for me in it, then the work hasn't been done yet. I'll keep doing my thing. If someone creates a thing and there is a place for me in it, I'll go do that. I know, easy. There's no losing here. It's beautiful. So that's the plan, and I'm excited. I created a Slack channel with Sun today, just me and him, and we're like exchanging ideas. It feels like the good old times. It feels like on Newgrounds. It feels like just having found a new collaborator, and I'm excited to make a game. Except the game is our life.
Hmm.
We're designing that, and yeah, I think it's gonna be great, man.
Exciting. It's wonderful to find your collaborators. I'm happy for you. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that you would probably need help, and I'm curious what kind of help you think you need.
Yeah, I think the thing. See, I was gonna say funding, but I feel like I don't. There's been a bunch of people who approached me with like asking if I need money, or others who are like, "Here's a grant," which is also kind of crazy. But that can happen. I want people to know that if you just write down your plan. 'Cause someone saw my GitHub and they saw that I said I was self-funded, and then they were like, "Hey, I represent this um, grant. We like your work. Keep doing your work." Which is okay. That's pretty cool. Okay, but what would I actually need? Honestly, right now, I think what I need most is these sort of like contributors. Like, I feel like I need people to understand and engage with when I write down this plan, I want people to look at it and be like, either they're gonna have a reaction, either they're gonna say this is beautiful, or they're gonna say this sucks. Either way, I need to hear like tell me what it is, contribute if you want. And if you like it, then you should help spread it. Like I feel like this is something people like are still like have a trepidation of, like when I make something, it's not going to spread by itself. Like if you think it's a good idea, you could just take the idea and rewrite it in your own words and like spread it. Um, like just like taking ownership. So yeah, I feel like right now we're in this phase of like I'm looking for people who understand what I'm doing and who can contribute, because there's and again enormous amount of work to do. I think it's very important. And then after that, I think I'll want to something more concrete, like funding opportunities, so I can hire people, even if they don't fully, see the whole plan, but they want to contribute, and then I can find a place for everyone in my thing. But then there could be competing things. That's good. Again, if someone has a better vision, I hope they succeed, because I care about the thing being done, not about me necessarily doing it. So contributions and understanding. I want people's hearts and minds. I want your attention. That's what I need most.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of territory in this conversation so far. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or dive more deeply into?
No, I think the Newgrounds arc, and then it sort of coming back around now, I think feels very fitting. It's actually just very satisfying, because I feel like to me one of the foundational pieces is with memetics or whatever, this idea of having like um, a dashboard where you can look at your tweets, and it's not just your tweets, it's like how you've evolved as a person over time and what led to what. And then I want to be able to see that, but then think of it not just as think of it not just as you changing, but if everyone doing that, we can see how society is changing. And then I don't know. This is kind of what I call everything. I was going to say the human memome project. I mean, everything kind of fits under this big umbrella. It's this fun, word of like, we had the Human Genome Project to map the human genome, and this is the human memome, and what are we mapping? We're mapping the beliefs and narratives that are in our minds that are always changing, and it's orders of magnitude more ambitious than the Genome Project. And unlike the Genome Project, where you can just sample a bunch of people, the memome requires your participation, your voluntary participation. Can't be done any other way. And I don't know. I love the Human Meme project, man. I don't know. It's a I haven't written the essay yet because I feel like it's such a good. I didn't even come up with. I mean, I came up with it, but then I've seen other people like referring to. I found like old emails, like in mailing lists from like the 70s or 80s or something, where people were like discussing this idea, like what do we call it? Um, I think they were like, I don't know. It's like a kind of thing like idea that's been rediscovered multiple times, but it's never happened. And I think now's the time. So yeah, I think that was good. Getting that in there, the Human
Hmm.
Meme project.
Uh-huh. Mm. Well, I'm grateful to have spoken with you and have a better sense of how all your projects fit together and what you're on about. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes with your comes of your collaboration with Sun and other projects that you do and what you manifest in the world. Yeah. So thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you, and I appreciate your patience with all my threads and all my. But I think this is the most legible I've ever been, so that's exciting. And maybe next time will be even more legible. But for now, this is gonna be have to be it. Um, and we'll keep building. Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention.
My absolute pleasure. Hmm.